34 people were killed at Lonmin's Marikana platinum mine in South Africa last week when police opened fire with automatic weapons as 3,000 striking drill operators ignored orders to disperse. Lonmin was already struggling with falling platinum prices, a drop in demand, and a net debt burden of $356 million. The lost production resulting from the violence is forecast to be equivalent to about 7% of last year's output.
What it means for the company's sort of balance sheet is that it said late yesterday that it's in danger of breaching its covenants on its debt, which basically means that because of the production it's going to lose, its kind of gross earnings are going to fall below a ratio of net debt. That means it's in trouble with its bankers. So it's going to start talking to those banks. I think it's already talking to those banks to try and get a bit of leeway, but it has also said that it might have to go to the market to raise fresh equity. That'd probably be a rights issue in quite short order.
The longer the dispute drags on, the worse things could get for Lonmin.
We believe we've had good relationships, and we have had good relationships with our unions in the past. What's happened over the last week has been a blow to that. But it's absolutely our intention to get those relationships back onto a good footing.
If this turns into a protracted thing, and in the wake of last week's tragedy, there's speculation this might drag on now for another 6 to 8 weeks. The longer it goes on, the worse it gets. It's difficult to tell exactly what the impact is going to be, but the priority for a company like Lonmin right now will be to find a speedy resolution to this. That really is the key thing.
South Africa's President Jacob Zuma has launched an official inquiry into the killings, calling for the country to unite in mourning. But there's growing speculation this could only be the start.
These kind of demands are spreading through the sector. Again, that's not unusual. South Africa's got very strong union history. Why it's sort of particularly acute for the platinum sector is that it's very concentrated at both ends. Demand is very concentrated among car makers who are obviously in all sorts of trouble. So demand is down, prices are down, I think about a fifth over the year. So at the demand side of the industry, there's a big squeeze on. There's also a big push for higher wages in South Africa, where inflation's been a problem for a long time. And the metal itself is concentrated in this bushveld complex in South Africa. Most of the world's platinum is there where these mines are situated.
Mining in South Africa is a politically charged sector. Former African National Congress youth leader Julius Malema has called for the country's mining industry to be nationalised, and he's demanded President Zuma's resignation over the handling of the shootings.
There's huge frustration and discontent in poor black South Africa, which is still largely living in townships and informal settlements, and they see the wealth generated principally by the extractive industries, and they see the new black tycoons joining the old white tycoons at the top of that, and painfully slow redistribution of that wealth, which is obviously the most sort of shuddering contrast to the miracle nation that everyone was expecting in 1994.
There's certain estimates would suggest that South Africa is actually the most unequal society on earth, and certainly since President Zuma came into power in 2009, there has been a sense of growing disaffection with the ANC. Another big issue for Jacob Zuma is corruption. He faces a lot of allegations, or his government and sort of his inner circle faces a lot of accusations of corruption, both from the trade union movement, but also amongst the general public. It really has become something much more pronounced in recent years. There was a big strike in 2010 involving over 1 million workers, which effectively brought the economy to a standstill for several days. And that strike had very strong undertones of suggesting, you don't represent us anymore, and all you're interested in is money for you and nothing for us. So it's definitely an issue. The ANC, it is taking some policy action to address it, but the problem with South Africa often isn't a lack of plans. They have a lot of good plans. The problem seems to be on the execution front.
The platinum industry was already in trouble before the tragedy at the Marikana mine. The killings have exacerbated the situation for Lonmin. For South Africa, the unrest is a stark reminder of the country's economic divisions and the growing unease among its ordinary people. Daniel Garrahan, Financial Times.